Hey guys, Metal Jesus here, and today I am back again talking about the mighty PlayStation 2. It is one of my all-time favorite systems because there are so many great games released on it, and there are literally hundreds of exclusive games you can't play anywhere else. Let's take a look. Here's a game I was really surprised to see on a list of exclusive PlayStation 2 games. I actually had to double check the list because I was like, what? But yeah, TimeSplitters, the original, only came out on the PlayStation 2, and it was a launch title in some areas. If you're not familiar with TimeSplitters, well, it is a super fun first-person shooter that mixes in time travel elements here. But the notable thing is that it's made by some of the developers from Rare. Those are the same people that brought us GoldenEye and also Perfect Dark, which explains why this game is so much fun. Here we have Blood Will Tell. This is based on a Japanese manga where the main character has to defeat 48 different enemies to retrieve his stolen body parts. Kind of weird. However, it's a really fun game and a lot of people are looking for it, which means that it's also one of the more expensive and collectible games on the PlayStation 2. So, if you see a copy for cheap, you're gonna wanna pick it up. Oh man, next up is a game a lot of people are looking for, and that is Robot Alchemic Drive. This game is, well, there's really nothing quite like it. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, this looks like a mech game, but what's cool about this is that it's unlike any other mech game you've probably played because you control the robot not from the cockpit, but from a remote control on the ground. What that means is that as a player, you're trying to find a good vantage point from the ground so you can see the robot and its foe. Also, the dialogue and voice acting is just laughably bad. It's such a fun game. Reggie will be happy that I included a fighting game in this video. This is Guilty Gear X2, the highly rated sequel to the original Guilty Gear X. This fighting game has 6 new characters, a bunch of new moves, also a new story mode, but most importantly, it still has that kick-ass rock and metal soundtrack. Plus, who doesn't love traditional hand-drawn 2D fighting games? I know I do, even though I suck at them, but I like watching Reggie play them, and this is a good one. This is kind of a random game that only came out on the PlayStation 2. It's Destruction Derby Arenas. Now, this is the same developer that brought us Destruction Derby Raw on the PlayStation 1, as well as a bunch of Formula 1 racing games of that same era. There's really not much to say about this game. I don't know if I would really recommend it per se. It's a bit shallow, but you know, these arcade racing games can be fun in short bursts. And honestly, I kind of miss them. I know that these were dime a dozen back in the day, but now we rarely get them. Here's a game that comes up on a lot of people's lists when you're talking about licensed games that are, you know, quote unquote hidden gems. This is 24 the Game. Of course, this is based on the popular TV series. Now, what's interesting about this game is that the same developer also made the Medieval series on the PlayStation 1, as well as Primal and Ghost Hunter on the PlayStation 2, and Killzone Mercenaries on the Vita. Next up, we have a futuristic sports title called AirBlade. But what's cool about this is that it was developed by Criterion. Now, you know them as, well, the amazing developer behind the Burnout series. Oh yes. What's funny is that I didn't realize until I was doing this video and doing a bit of research in the background that Criterion also made Trick Style on the Dreamcast. So this is kind of like a spiritual sequel to that Dreamcast game. So cool, and again, you can only find it on the PlayStation 2. I don't know if you remember or not, but when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, that was of course just a massive game changer, especially when it comes to the open world sandbox games. Well, Sony had to get in on that action and they put out The Getaway. The Getaway's big selling point at the time was that they had mapped out and recreated London in HD. And you know, I've never been to London, so I can't tell you how accurate that is, but I remember being blown away at the time. And, the game sold well enough that it got a sequel called Black Monday. All right, now we're talking. SOCOM US Navy SEALs on the PlayStation 2. This game and also the sequel, these were my jam for about a year. I absolutely love these games. Third-person tactical squad games. What's cool about them is that you control your main character on the screen, but you can also give commands to your other squad members, and they actually listen and do what you say. At the time, that was very cool, lots of fun. These games are pretty challenging. It's pretty easy to die if you do something stupid, but that's part of the fun. And there was a couple of them that were exclusive on the PlayStation 2. They look dated now, but the gameplay is solid. I remember when I was reviewing games professionally back when the PlayStation 2 was new, and Sony put a ton of marketing muscle behind the Mark of Kree and its sequel, which is The Rise of Kasai. And these were exclusive to the PlayStation 2, and they just didn't take off. It's kind of weird because they're really well-made games, and they had a really cool fighting mechanic where they use the two analog thumbsticks in kind of a unique way. But sadly, these games are kind of mostly forgotten now, which is unfortunate because, again, they're pretty cool, and if you want to play them, well, you're going to need a PlayStation 2. So if you have one, definitely check them out. Next up is Gungrave, and I remember when this game first came out. It just really stood out as something new and different at the time. Of course, now I've learned that, the character designs were by the same guy who created the anime Trigun. I love Trigun, and so that's why I'm probably drawn to this because so cool looking. Here's another game I was like, what? It only came out on the PlayStation 2? Yep, it's true. Katamari Damacy, the original, only came out on the PlayStation 2. Of course, there have been a ton of sequels that came out on the 360 and all the other consoles since then, but if you want to play the original, which is arguably the best, I'm just saying, you gotta have it on the PlayStation 2. And yes, I love this game. So much fun. Front Mission 4 and 5, which I don't own, so I can't show you that, but Front Mission 4 here is a tactical role-playing game with heavy emphasis on story-driven characters. Now, what's cool about these games is that they are very well-received mech tactical shooting games. There's a bunch of customization, and also they're known for having really high production values. Alert! Here is another hidden gem on the PlayStation 2, but there were so many of them, and Downhilll Domination is a good one. This is a BMX arcade racing game, but what's kind of curious about it is that it was made by Incognito Entertainment. Now, they may sound kind of familiar. That's because they also made the magnificent Twisted Metal Black. But seriously, if you like arcade racing games and you have a PS2, definitely check out Downhilll Domination. Next up is a classic for a lot of people who played it, and that is Champions of Norrath. This is a top-down RPG set in the EverQuest universe. As you can tell, it's basically a dungeon-crawling hack-and-slash, similar to Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. As a matter of fact, it uses that same engine. But this game is very notable because a lot of people played this as 4-player co-op, and it also had network support. A lot of people love this game, and it holds up even today. Aqua Teen Hunger Force Zombie Ninja Pro-Am. My friends, that is the title of a game. That is a crazy title, and you know what? It's perfect because this is a crazy game. Imagine, if you will, a hybrid kart racing / fighting game / golf game, if you can believe it. But if you're familiar with the Adult Swim animated series, well, this is going to be no surprise. This is definitely one of the weirdest games in my collection, and that is saying a lot. Here's another game that I had to double check to make sure it was exclusive to the PlayStation 2. Kind of surprised me because it's EA, but that is the original SSX. And I have to say, I've mentioned it before, but this is the game that made me want to own a PlayStation 2. When this came out, me and my buddy Bo, we played this to death. It was so much fun, and you couldn't play it anywhere else. Couldn't play it on the PC. No other system had it, and it still holds up today, so I love it. Here is War of the Monsters, and I remember fondly when this game first came out. I mean, who doesn't want to play as Godzilla or King Kong or the Beast from 2000 Fathoms? I mean, it's just so much fun to go around the city, destroying everything, picking up buses, throwing it at the enemy. It's a good time, and again, it can only be found on the PlayStation 2. Next up is an RPG called Rogue Galaxy that people are still talking about today. A lot of people consider this game to be their favorite RPG during this era. I remember this game because of its gorgeous visuals, and that is courtesy of developer Level 5. Level 5 is familiar to a lot of gamers because they made some amazing games, including Dark Cloud, Dragon Quest VIII, the Professor Layton series, and also Ni no Kuni. What to say about Mr. Mosquito? Well, this is quirky Japanese at its finest. What do you do in this game? Well, you play, of course, a mosquito, and you are, let's say, terrorizing a Japanese family, or perhaps you could say living off them or sucking their blood. It's a trippy game that, honestly, I'd love to see them remake this in VR. It would be amazing. Next up is Okage Shadow King. This came out at a time when a lot of people were just desperate for RPGs on the PS2, and what they ended up getting in this game is something that's pretty unorthodox, at least when it comes to the story. The game is memorable for having a look that's both kind of fairy tale looking and also Tim Burton-esque. Really interesting looking game. Not the most amazing game, but it does have a really cool story. So if you're looking for something a little bit different, definitely check out Okage. I discovered the series of role-playing games called Shadow Hearts on the PlayStation 2. I'm showing you the second game in the series here called Covenant. Such a fun RPG series. What I like about it is that it's turn-based, but the combat engine has this real-time judgment ring. Adds a little bit of skill to the attacks, which I thought was pretty cool. Also, I like how the series is a weird mix of real world and also fantasy. That's kind of what sets it apart. Sadly, the Shadow Hearts series ended on the PlayStation 2. From a New World is the last game in the series, and it's kind of a bummer. I'd love to see them bring it back. There were a couple Suikoden games on the PlayStation 2. I started with the third one, but I can't seem to find it in my collection. I think it's lost somewhere in my game room, but here is the fourth one. Now, the fourth one is a prequel to the series. It takes place 150 years before Suikoden 1, and this is the first game in the series to have fully voiced actors for most of the characters, which is kind of cool. Now, these are generally pretty epic RPGs. However, this particular game here got relatively low scores because people thought it was too short. You can finish it in about 15 or 20 hours. In my opinion, one of the best things about the PlayStation 2 is just the sheer amount of great games released on it in every genre, and the RPGs were no exception. And I have to say, it's a hard pick, but probably my favorite exclusive RPGs on the system were the Xenosaga series. If you haven't played them, oh man, they are epic, they are science fiction, they are... Did I mention epic? They're long, they're beautiful, they're super fun. What can I say about them other than the second one is kind of weak, but the first and the third are amazing. And like so many other games in this video, you can only play them on the PlayStation 2. That's just a small sample of some of the PlayStation exclusive games, but there are hundreds more. So if you'd like to see a part 2 or part 3, please let me know down in the comments below because I would love your feedback. Also, if you happen to have a PlayStation 4, well, you can get some of these games in the PlayStation Store. Sony has remastered some of these and made them run on the PlayStation 4, which is pretty cool, especially if you're not into collecting the physical versions like I am. Alright guys, as always, I want to thank you for watching my channel, thank you for subscribing, and take care. And speaking of PlayStation exclusives, do you recognize the game that is playing on my chest right there, huh? That's the intro to a PS2 game. Let me know down in the comments if you recognize it. And you're going to want to be subscribed to my channel because I release 2 new videos every single week. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching.